This is the part I love, where I just like start to see attendees just like pop in. Got a lot of early birds. Feel free to put in the chat where you're from, who you are, what your LinkedIn is. Are you going to NRF? Lots of things that we can kind of chat about while we've got a couple minutes of free time before the webinar kicks off. Orlando, gotta love the 1 o'clock rainstorms every day. They're quick. Great question, Kathy. They are not transferable. If a slide accidentally did say that they were transferable, they are non-transferable. You do have to attend the webinar to be eligible to attend or to be eligible to win a scholarship. Great team over there at Dick's Sporting Goods. Anyone going to be at NRF? I know the ALTO team will be. Absolutely. I will send you an email. Got about 1 more minute. You just popped in the Loss Prevention Foundation's page for LinkedIn. Make sure to follow us there if you're not already. I'll grab Altos while we're in the session and pop theirs in the chat as well, so you can follow them as well. We are nearing our time here. Give it just another second here for folks to jump from one meeting to the next. All right, it is 12:01 Central, 1:01 Eastern. So I'm going to go ahead and kick this off. Thank you so much for joining us today, no matter where your time zone is. So, if you're in morning, evening, afternoon, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Today, the session is Strategic Alliances for Safer Stores and Communities, sponsored by ALTO. ALTO is a valued partner of the LPF, though. So thank you so much for sponsoring today's webinar. Just to give a little bit of information about them, ALTO is the last mile in asset protection strategies by supporting retailers to deliver consequences for those who disrupt the safety of stores and their teams. Presently, ALTO operates in 26 states and across 36 metro areas throughout the United States, having established partnerships with over 19 national and regional clients. For additional information, please visit www.alto.us. Now, before I introduce our panelists for today, just a couple of things. The session is being recorded, so if for some reason you have to drop off or you want to see the webinar again, all you have to do is revisit the original registration link. It will ask you to re-register to watch this on demand. Everyone is muted upon entry. And if you have any questions, feel free to pop those in the Q&A box. There is a difference. You've got a Q&A box and you've got a chat. So the Q&A box is where we'll see all those questions come in. The chat, we'll try and monitor those and see what we can get out of that, but it's much better if you can pop it in the chat. Plus, if you want to be anonymous, that is the place to do it. And I'm excited to announce today's speakers. So today we have Christy Bauswell. She's the VP of Development at ALTO. We've got Robert Rosin, who is ALTO's law enforcement consultant. And today we also have with us Holland, Walgreens Asset Protection Manager. Christy, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Julie, and thank you, Loss Prevention Foundation. We do appreciate the opportunity to join you guys today. And of course, thank you everyone on the call for taking time out of your day. I know it's not easy to set aside an hour, but we really appreciate it. So we will get started talking about these strategic alliances for safer stores and communities. Let's start here, right? We're going to set the baseline. We all know that the vicious cycle of crime in retail keeps repeating, right? I don't think anybody will argue that. As crimes repeat, the offender tends to escalate in violence as well. This ends up putting the retailer's employees, who are just simply trying to go to work to earn a wage, and the community as a whole in danger. In particular, last year, 24% of the 11,000 cases that we worked at ALTO were violent in nature. Now, just over the first quarter of 2024, of the cases that we're working, there are 324 that have included a violent offender. So we need to stop the cycle, but it sounds simple. It's just actually pretty complex. And we're going to talk to you about some of the ways that we've been able to help there. There's complexities with law enforcement, with the court system, and with retailers. I don't think anyone will argue either that everyone's under-resourced at this point. And the other issue is once an incident occurs, through that entire process to get a resolution, there are hundreds of what we refer to as pitfalls that can occur or hurdles. So how do we stop the cycle, right? If only 5% of retail crimes are actually making it into the judicial system at all, how do we put an end to that recidivism and particularly the violence if there's no consequence? And that's a big part of what we're going to talk about today. So today we're actually going to review 2 case studies. We're going to have that through the lens of Robert, the law enforcement lens, and then Corey, who has store operations and asset protection background. So the first one we're going to start with today is the retail safety and the challenges that often impede progress. The strategic relationships and partnerships in a community are absolutely vital. So with that, we'll end up discussing an unhoused encampment case study out of Oakland, California. And after that, we're going to talk with Corey. We're going to dive into the pitfalls of retail crime, specifically with the prosecution part and trying to connect the dots. Again, the strategic partnerships play a major part in obtaining resolutions. That case is actually out of Miami. So first, I want to give a proper introduction to Robert, and bear with me, this will take a second, but Robert's done a lot. So he is an ALTO consultant for us on the law enforcement side, but he is also a seasoned law enforcement leader. He's currently the captain of police patrol and the detective bureau commander at the Caldwell Police Department in Caldwell, Idaho. He's been doing that since March of 2023. Robert's bringing a strategic and hands-on approach to public safety operations. Prior to his role in Caldwell, though, he did serve as captain of the police for area operations and commander at the Oakland Police Department in Oakland, California. He had that role from January 2020 to March 2023, and he honed his skills in managing complex law enforcement operations. So Robert, he was actually the captain of the Oakland Police when one of our retail partners was being negatively affected by an unhoused encampment. And as this encampment grew, more theft, violence, drug use, and other disruptions followed along with it. They were negatively affecting the store, the employees, and the community. Now, we always want to make sure that we're handling things like this in a very humane way, but we also need to make sure that we're helping the community by cleaning up the issues that are negatively affecting them. So this does take a lot of coordinating, partnerships, time, resources, and a lot of communication. And Robert being part of this cleanup, I wanted to give him the opportunity, in his own words, from that law enforcement perspective, to discuss that. So Robert, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Christy, for the introduction there, and hello to the other panelists and those viewing from home, or wherever you're at. I'm really excited to be here today to discuss a real success story that I think is relatively uncommon for those in the law enforcement arena. Particularly, I want to highlight, as Christy mentioned, that we were effective because of the partnerships. And I'm going to take a dive into details of the operation. And I just want to preface this by saying this was more than a cleanup mission for the partners involved. What we were focused on, what ALTO brought to our attention at the police department, was that this particular encampment and how it affected the retailer in the parking lot where it had been established was impacting those people who were not only the suspects in crime, but were the victims or the store employees who were trying to have a normal life. And so once that mission was established through ALTO, that really opened the door on the policing side for us to get involved. So to set the stage, we had a encampment in Oakland, really close to a Walgreens. And at that particular location, during COVID, we saw a huge boom in homelessness. And at the same time, unfortunately, some offenders, some violent offenders, some drug dealers at the time began to use the mask of homelessness to conduct illicit activities. So we saw a surge in retail theft, in organized retail crime, in criminal caravans who were driving through our city doing looting. And at that point, as Christy kind of mentioned, the resources, but we were extremely short-staffed at Oakland. And we had a very hard time focusing on violent crime in and of itself, let alone some of the retail theft issues. So me, as responsible for over 100,000 residents in my area as a police captain, had to triage things on a day-to-day basis. And one thing I'll mention, but I want to get it out now in front, is that when ALTO came to the table, they provided a white glove approach for us. They allowed us to, as the police department, to focus on other things while being a force multiplier to what we're doing in operations. So I was able to dedicate resources to the ALTO team to help improve the encampment and reduce those crimes while still focusing on the serious and violent crime. And I think that was a big realization for us at Oakland PD once we saw that how much help we could get from communication, from relationships, that really propelled this project forward. So getting back on task here, through COVID, like I said, huge spike in crime, homelessness. This encampment grew from a few tents to people building structures. And with the structures that were being built, they started stealing power from a nearby church. And what's relevant to that piece is that the church was shut down during COVID because of protocol. But they saw an increase in their bill. And they brought that to the police department's attention. And we simply had to look at that and say, hey, unfortunately, we have other things to work on. We have to ignore that theft of power for this time. Walgreens, same story. They told the police department, hey, we're losing power. We're losing money each month from this encampment. They're stealing bins with our trademark on it. We need you to do something. Unfortunately, based on resources, we couldn't respond. We couldn't do anything based on zero bail reform and deprioritization of theft by our local district attorney, and even some community pushback against law enforcement for targeting people who are stealing under the mindset that maybe they're just stealing because they can't get any resources during this trying time. A lot of different things going on for us at that time. So in comes ALTO. And again, we have a meeting with them. I'm the area captain responsible for a large area, 24/7 hours a day. And they bring a plan in front of us. And the plan constitutes getting everyone on the same page. It's a collaborative approach, right? It's talking to the stakeholders. They were able to bring in leaders from the church. ALTO sent a team out, and I assigned some staff to go with them, but they had weekly meetings with people in the encampment, encouraging them to seek other places to live. And those relationships that ALTO formed with people in the encampment proved to be beneficial, because once we hit roadblocks due to a city policy that did not allow police departments to close encampments just for crime issues, ALTO made a meeting between the police department, the retailer, community, and the city council team. And once that meeting occurred with the city council team, they were able to come up with an idea to actually relocate those people from the retailer's parking lot to a city-sanctioned location nearby. And one by one, we saw people leave that encampment. And as a result of people leaving that encampment, the quality of life for the people at the store and the community started to improve. And I was really impressed, because as a person strapped for resources in policing during a very challenging time, I was able to give back to the community through enhancing their quality of life without having to make a bunch of arrests, without having to be the bad guy and be on the media for shutting down an encampment in violation of city policy. It really felt good to see the conditions there improve. And really, that was a jump off spot for us and at the police department for how we would handle other similar situations citywide. So there was a lot of challenges that we faced, quite a bit of pitfalls, but that kind of encapsulates my role in what we partnered with from a law enforcement perspective for that encampment closure.
Great. Thanks, Robert. I appreciate you sharing that. We appreciate your partnership through that whole process. So in terms of this webinar, right, being about strategic alliances and relationships in the community, do you feel without those alliances that, especially with the complexities in Oakland in general with crime, do you think that would have been, that unhoused encampment would have been able to be moved?
No, it had been there 2 years prior to COVID. And when that city policy changed, that really stopped our ability to enforce laws there. We were told at one point, that we needed to focus on serious and violent crime for obvious reason. So some of the drug dealing and theft naturally just kind of fell by the wayside. And it wasn't until ALTO became that proverbial squeaky wheel, if you would, and kept bringing the the attention towards the root causes of the issues to the table. And then once they were able to get all those meetings with, like I said, the community stakeholders, the city council members, people at the retailers, you know, people from the community too, who I think they were given a voice through this process that regularly they probably wouldn't have had.
Great. Anything else on that you wanted to add, Robert? Thanks so much again for sharing that. We really appreciate it.
Nothing specific. I will say though that just to double down, in public service, I think, especially from a law enforcement perspective, once we're able to partner with people in the community and people in the private sector and people from the district attorney's office, once those relationships are established and they're formed and everyone is you know, focused on one mission, some of the barriers just naturally fall away and people become more willing to help and to prioritize the issue when it's a unified front. And what I found, you know, in almost 20 years of policing is that there's so many opportunities for a seemingly small case to fall by the wayside, that once you have support of an outside entity kind of focusing on that mission and really tracking and using data and determining best ways to kind of triage but still stay focused, we really saw a great result. And even through like the most challenging time that I've been in policing during that COVID time, this project was able to be successful by that collaborative effort. So without that collaboration, I'm certain I can tell you, you know, with no doubt that we would not have those same results today.
Great. No, thank you, Robert. We really do appreciate it. And it sounds like, you know, that it was a win-win, right? For the people in the encampment as well. From what I understood, you know, they had better living conditions after they moved this encampment. I believe they built some tiny houses. They had access to showers, bathrooms, things of that nature. So it was, you know, we helped the retailer, right, to get that cleaned up because that was a nuisance to them in the community. Just like you said, with the drug dealers coming in and using that as, you know, their method to utilize the encampment. And then the unhoused residents, right, that moved to tiny houses, have roofs over their heads. So yeah, good story. So again, much appreciated. Okay, so we're going to move on to Mr. Corey Holland with Walgreens. Thank you for joining us today, sir. All right, Corey Holland, LPC, RC, PHT. And Corey, you want to go ahead and tell, that's an interesting bit, the RC, PHT and what you did during COVID.
So during my operations side, I am a registered pharmacy technician. That is one of the requirements Walgreens had for us to be registered technicians. I was also able and had a license to do CPR and was giving out vaccines for COVID. I was helping out in stores and also on contracts we had to help with cruise lines. So it was pretty cool. It's a good license to have. It helps the healthcare industry. But that's what, yeah, that one means, certified pharmacy technician.
Just found that pretty interesting. Thank you, Corey. All right, so Corey, he is currently the Asset Protection Manager for South Florida and Puerto Rico regions for Walgreens. He began with Walgreens in the Asset Protection Department over 2 years ago. He started March 2022, but he actually began his career as a photo clerk in 1998, worked his way up to store manager in 2005. So Corey spent his entire 26-year career in the pharmacy retail industry. He's been on both sides of the fence. So we wanted Corey to join us today to speak from an asset protection lens, as well as a store operations lens. So I think he'll shed some interesting insight on there. The case we're going to talk about with Corey today is a violent crime occurrence. This happened to be at the hands of a repeat offender. Another interesting bit of it, this offender actually hit multiple jurisdictions, and what seemed to be disparate incidents were able to be connected. Charges were able to be aggregated, and he actually received a consequence. So Corey, before we jump into you talking about this case, I kind of wanted to get your take on what we said earlier about that 5% of cases making it into the court system. So from the operations lens, as well as from asset protection, what do you think about that? Does that surprise you? If yes or no, why?
Yeah, and thank you, Christy, Julie, for having me on the call today. Robert, great job. Yeah, I agree, 5%. A lot of reasons happen why it slips through the cracks. You have things from evidence not collected on time, fear of showing up to court, team members, being in operations. You have team members that have that fear of being in the courtroom, seeing that subject and that subject knowing where they work. No oversight to what happens after the arrest. Multiple court dates, subpoenas not getting into the right hands, retailers and law enforcement not showing up for the court on time. These things factor in. That's why this case that we're going to go over, I'm glad it didn't fall through those cracks in the 5%. But this case happened towards the end of December 2022 and in the beginning of January 2023 in the South Florida area. Like Christy stated, in multiple jurisdictions. We had a subject that was going in, ripping our registers out, mostly on the overnight and taking the cash. He did hit a location in the morning time where there was a cashier present near the register, and she was assaulted. This case went through Miami-Dade Police Department, and the ALTO local staff attorney, Esther, helped a lot on this during this spree and building that bolo, to the point on April 11th this year, the offender pleaded guilty and received a sentence of 30 years in state prison, followed by 15 years of reporting probation as a habitual felony offender and a violent offender. This is permanently on his record moving forward. So yeah, this was a big case for us and a huge win.
Definitely a win, especially when there's violence involved, right? So in your opinion, Corey, what would you say a key factor in this case was that led to such an impactful outcome?
Great communication. I was covering these locations. The APM at the time was on vacation. So I know the areas. I was more in the Fort Lauderdale area. This was out of North Miami area. But the communication was huge. Having that, it all starts with, calling the LP, law enforcement right away. SOC calls us, contacts us. We go in. Our first thing and foremost is making sure our team members are safe, getting a pulse of that and seeing how it goes. Then once plugging into the ALTO is made aware. Big thing there is we have a thing with ALTO that they do law enforcement partnership meetings. Good thing there, in those counties, they hosted one for each of those counties. So the communication was there, the connection with detectives, having that line of communication, it made the case go a lot quicker on assigning and getting evidence out there. ALTO has customer success specialists. At the time it was Billy. Billy helped collecting CCTV video footage for the detective, having the PD case numbers available, bridging that gap between different jurisdictions, but making it one big case helped a lot. And it also factors in with the ALTO attorney, Esther, again. Having those details, it means a lot. That law enforcement meeting that you have, that operations AP and ALTO host in the stores, really bridges that gap that made it go a lot quicker and smoother. On this case, one of the things with all the evidence and what we had on this individual quick, that team member that was assaulted didn't have to attend in court. It went through Zoom. So the fear of seeing that subject again and putting our team members through that wasn't a factor. So that was huge, and great question, Christy.
Great, thanks, Corey. And I understood Esther did a good job of helping to prep them too when they did need to be, to be present. So that's great. Okay, so we talked about the different police departments, right? I believe Miami-Dade, Miami Gardens, and Hialeah. I think the alliance, right, those strategic relationships played a crucial role in identifying that particular suspect. And like we talked about before, he did have a past record. Your team collaborated with the ALTO local team to prepare evidence and testimonies, as we just talked about. So how was this partnership fully developed, and how did it contribute to the case's success?
So it all starts, again, piggybacking the connection with the LEPM, Law Enforcement Partner Meeting. You had that connection, but also the connection that happens with AP and your customer success specialist, Billy, for those locations. They go in, train our team members, show them how to utilize the tools that ALTO has. How do we collect the evidence, the PD case numbers, having those factors in there. That plays a big role. You're taking a lot of hands out of the cookie jar. Now you have the customer success specialist, the AP involved, sometimes major crimes. Carlos Gonzalez for us, he's phenomenal. Esther, huge, like you said, attorney. She actually communicates with team members, like you said. That is huge for a team member to hear an attorney is involved. It shows that action is happening. But it's to have that one bridge lane that goes to the detectives, goes to the case where we have everything on time, anything that is needed, and it factors into making the case go as smooth as possible and get the biggest outcome. Like you see, 30 years in prison.
Yeah, that's a good one, but there's a reason for that, right? There's we touched a little bit on his past convictions, but do you want to talk just a little bit more about that, or the past offenses, I should say?
Yeah, I know the subject had armed carjacking in 2012 and had also affected various stores. This was big. We had to explain. Once the case was over, Billy, the customer success specialist, myself was hitting the locations, letting them know what happened, what was the outcome. Our cashier that was assaulted, she was in tears to hear that this individual was arrested, but then also showed sympathy, saying, wow, he's young and he's going to be away for 30 years in prison and 15 years of probation. And that's when we explained to her, you don't just get that on one charge. He never really learned a lesson, and she understood that. But these stores, hearing those wins and success is the key, and it's huge. But yeah, he had a long rap sheet, and he paid the price for it.
No, exactly. Yeah, that feedback to the stores, I'm sure that helps them to understand that they're doing a really good thing in reporting. So moving along, was there anything else you wanted to talk to on this case, Corey?
Just the communication. I know I said it over and over again, but once we hear the wins and our operations hears this, our team leaders, our stores, with ALTO sharing these wins on calls with us and forwarding it to the store, to our district managers, our directors, it gets them to understand the purpose of it. From going start of reporting the incident to building the evidence, having the PD case numbers, being in operations prior, I know a lot of retails, when we had an individual arrested for, say, a snatch and grab, $100, that's what we're going to court for $100. But with this, it bridges the gap between everything. It could be multiple jurisdictions, like Christy stated, and you're bridging it to make it over a certain, not just the amount, but you're getting the full evidence of what this subject has committed, and it's making a bigger impact having that than just having that one store operations. Now it's every store, every jurisdiction, and working with all the authorities.
It's a really great point. Thanks, Corey. And apologies, having a little bit of internet issue over here, so hoping that doesn't happen again. All right. Thank you very, very much. So I think the next thing that we want to talk about is just, so the issues that are happening out there with violent crime, right? It's, they're going on. There's the law enforcement piece, like we said. There's challenges for them being under-resourced, for the retailers and the court systems in general. Can you gentlemen, either of you, feel free to jump in, any of the pitfalls from the law enforcement perspective or from, the operations and asset protections perspective, just the pitfalls that occur and why these cases don't seem to be making it from the time the incident happens all the way through to some kind of, end result.
Yeah, I can take that, Christy. Really good question. And I think that it's important to bring awareness to the issue of pitfalls, because truly, I mentioned it a bit ago, but being focused on one mission together and being organized and having the data all together is how this is how to get maximum prosecution and maximum exposure to the issue. Without the data being tracked, there's 100 different points in the process of a crime happening to getting it into the judicial system. For example, a video of a theft. This could be the offender's 10th time doing the same theft at the same store. And if we lose that video, it's going to give the defense an out. It's going to give the prosecuting attorney an excuse to give the suspect or the offender a low sentence. So what's important here is staying focused, is being organized, assigning missions out and following up and making sure that stuff is done. That's how you reduce the shortfalls in these investigations, because like you said, a one-off theft of $100 doesn't mean anything in the judicial system. But when you aggregate everything together and you bring forth the data that shows this is an issue that's rampant, that's recurring, that's when you get those powerful sentences. That's when you get the deterrent. And really, you know, what I found is being a commander over many detective bureaus in my time is that these offenders will get into jail and they'll start talking about places to avoid. And once they associate, you know, ALTO being with certain retailers, the message is going to get out there to stay away from those retailers. And that's what you want. You want to prevent it from happening altogether, not just catch it on the back end.
While we wait for Christy to hop back in, I had a question that kind of I was thinking about going from the retailer side and going to the law enforcement side. You kind of have each touched upon, and absolutely kudos of the, let's see, Robert, you had called out relationships. Corey, you had called out communication. They absolutely work in tandem, hand in hand. I think anybody on this call recognizes how important relationships are to just really this industry in general. But I really kind of want to dive in just a tiny bit more while we're waiting for Christy to come back on. Corey, you had talked about, you know, putting together video and reports, and Robert, you had kind of touched on that a tiny bit on like what you like to receive. So I'd love to just kind of dive in there while we have a few extra minutes.
Yeah, I think I can answer that one, or give my opinion on it. It's very cool to see when police, detectives, they come to you and they're not worried about the part of going to locations and burning video. That you're able to collect it for them, send it email into evidence file. Having that connection, it's huge. It helps them a lot. They're super happy, not because I know that's a big problem with a lot of that evidence collection is video. You need the video. You need videos, witnesses. And it also trickles down to, like I said, our major crimes, the connection there with them and how much video these cases can move forward to other stuff that's a bigger picture. And the bridge gap that we had before is being a better connection, in my opinion.
And just to double down on that piece right there for a minute, I think Corey hit all the pieces, but what I've seen firsthand is with these retail theft cases, especially the ones that are recurring, it is very powerful to be able to assist a prosecuting attorney or a district attorney at the courtroom when they can't find a piece of evidence or they're missing a report. And the staff from ALTO's, the staff attorney who's there in court for that particular offender is able to say, hey, I've got a copy right here. Here you go. Or here's an extra copy of the report. Put it on display. That really sends a message. And to be able to help those people on the prosecuting side as well is really kind of what this is about. It's focusing, like I said, on a mission and executing to get the maximum results.
And like Robert said, once that word of mouth goes out, you're even getting a response time from the police even quicker. They know we're prosecuting. They know we're going to have the evidence. They know the relationship is there. You're getting that reaction time, and it starts showing.
Christy, I'll turn it back over to you. I was just Robert, you can take over and then I'll go off screen. I was just asking them a question about like resources and especially that collaboration and communication relationships between law enforcement and retailer of like what they're providing, what's helpful. So Robert, I'm going to go off screen and you can finish that up and then Christy.
Yeah, I just had one last comment about the resources and the partnerships there. In Oakland, I had I think it was 4 Walgreens stores and other retailers in my particular area that I was responsible for. And Corey mentioned it, but once even the police officers had an opportunity to kind of see that the retailers in partnership with ALTO were there to help them in their job, we saw officers choosing to go to these retailers to eat their lunch or to buy a Monster Energy drink or to take a break and write a report or use the restroom. And yeah, they were happier to go there because they felt that these retailers in partnership with ALTO were there to support them. And it's really that culture and that community that we're striving to improve on, versus just simply going there to take a report or make an arrest. It's more about the sustained partnerships. And I really found that to be helpful while I was the area commander over there in North Oakland.
That's great. And my apologies to everyone. I think I jinxed myself at the beginning when I talked about the internet. So I'm back. I apologize. But thank you, Corey, and Robert, for that information. I definitely appreciate it. But yeah, we've seen the same, right? The community engagement, those partnerships with law enforcement, the community in general, the stores, understanding what we're there to all help them do, which is to, resolve these business disruptions that they're affected with every single day. And another goal of what we're trying to do is to give back time to those awesome, there are great ORC teams out there within the retail world, asset protection. Partnering with you all has been great because we need you, we need that information, the data that's out there, whether it's CCTV footage, whatever it is that we can do to help push this along. It's been phenomenal. So again, appreciate Corey, you've been a great partner. Robert, you as well on the law enforcement side. So I think there are a couple things that we just want to touch on too, right? So we talked a lot about problems, which that's never fun, but we're all facing those in the retail world right now. But there are some things that I just want to reiterate. One of the things, and Corey and Robert both talked about it, the incident reporting piece is crucial, and understanding one of the things ALTO does is to help understand why the reporting is so crucial and that details matter. There is a big difference between when an incident occurs and the note saying man stole beer, right? Versus a very detailed report where we're able to then take that and connect the dots, like the example that we talked about, Corey, with the 3 separate Walgreens stores, other retailers involved as well, but being able to have information and connect the dots to assist you guys too, that really does help. And that's an important piece of it. And it all starts with that reporting. Without a report, nothing can be done about it. And so that recidivism keeps going on and on. And I can't restate that enough. I know I've talked to you both about that. Like I said, once our tech-enabled teams, our CSS and our attorney get that information, analyze those patterns, get whatever evidence that, is needed, we're helping to try to get that to the prosecution as quickly as possible and through the whole law enforcement channel. And Robert, you mentioned it too, the on-site teams, they're establishing those partnerships within the community. And that's a key piece of it. The whole strategic alliances for safer communities, stores, and people, right? That's the key part of this is the people. Just a couple of stats that I find kind of interesting. And I mentioned one of these at the beginning, but there's, this retail crime issue it's not minor. We, in 2023 at ALTO, we worked 11,000 cases. It's a lot of cases. We, did the delivering the evidence to prosecutors, law enforcement, over 16,500 times. So I'm not gonna throw stats at everybody. I'm just trying to demonstrate that without these partnerships and getting everyone lined up and on the same page with all of these tedious little details that need to be taken care of, that's when the pitfalls come in and that's when the case can fall apart. So again, our goal is to, we don't want 5% getting in the court. We want these things to be solved. And that's why when ALTO is getting involved, we've been able to take that to a 92% positive resolution rate. So we are seeing change one offender by one offender, and we're going to keep doing it. And it's through the partnerships with people like you guys that makes it possible. So really, really appreciate it. Julie, I think there may have been some questions that came in on the Q&A if you want to throw those out.
Yeah, absolutely. So there were a couple of questions that came in during registration. I'm going to start with those, and then I'm seeing a couple pop into the Q&A space. Please, if you have any questions, pop them in. We've got plenty of time to answer those. So I'm going to start with one that came in from registration. Are there alternative outcomes for reform?
Alternative? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a really great question. So our legal team, they always advocate on behalf of the retailer, right? And a lot of retailers, most, are concerned about corporate social responsibility. An example would be if someone comes into a store, maybe they have, they're still causing an issue for the store, so it needs to be taken care of. But maybe that is a result of a mental condition that they have, or maybe they have a drug addiction problem and it's causing them to act erratically. So we will certainly advocate to get them the help that they need. We always want to look out for that root cause of what's happening. Someone with a mental illness walking in a store, knocking things off of the shelf, doesn't necessarily need to go to jail. It's not going to fix the problem, right? So we can advocate to get them the help they need, to ask for a mental health evaluation, or, maybe a court mandated drug addiction program if that's the issue. So there's definitely other options for reform. And last year alone, I think about a little less than a third, I think it's about 29% of our cases ended up in an alternative sentencing, which that's what that falls in, right? That reform that was asked about.
Thank you.
May I just double down on that real quick? I think that the Oakland case that I discussed earlier really highlighted that alternative reform, because there are some cities and some communities across the nation where the alternative piece that we used wouldn't have fit for that community. But in Oakland, in alignment with the city's own policy on relocating those who are homeless, that was a perfect example of finding a solution without resulting in arrests, because that project was successful and it didn't take us driving over there and filling people in buses and hauling them off to jail. I only think we arrested maybe a handful of people for some serious crimes. But that piece was fixed based on that alternative to incarceration. So that really highlighted that piece. And ALTO was really on board with, understanding the concerns of the community and the political climate and how to maneuver through that, some of those challenges.
Yeah, no, thank you. A question that came in previously during registration, then also a live one that's come in. I'm going to kind of combine the two because you've touched a little bit on the importance of reporting. The original question was, what are some of the best practices for businesses in reporting and documentation of incidents of retail crime to facilitate investigations and prosecutions? And then the one that just came in live was, are there templates so that way that they can give detailed reports to help stores give a more precise report of like the things that you guys need to prosecute, to connect cases, all of that?
Great questions. Thanks, Julie. So yes, there are definitely best practices, right? I mentioned details. That's key. Without the details, it's really hard to get someone identified, to connect the dots, aggregate charges in different stores throughout the alliance. So that's first and foremost. Even before that, before the details, like I said, it's reporting. A lot of times, reporting may not be the first thing that a store wants to do, but as Corey and Robert talked about earlier, once they get that feedback that the efforts that they've made to file that report, to put the details in, and there's a variety of ways to do that I'll talk about in a second, but to put that information in there, that ended up with us being able to take that, work with law enforcement, and get that into the court system and through to some kind of a resolution. And we go back and we talk to the stores and tell them what happened. It just reinforces that, right? So that it is a best practice. In terms of, you know, a template, there are, we certainly have our tech enabled. You know, we have a way to report those things with fields to put in details. And we can also work with other, you know, with case management systems that are out there to get that information to flow our way. So we have a variety of ways that we can actually get that information. Robert or Corey, Corey, I know you and I have talked a lot about reporting. Any best practices that you can advise on?
So I'm glad you brought that up. Details, like you said, little things like tattoo on the neck, making sure the report shows the dollar amount. It goes in the right category. Not just saying white male came in 2 o'clock. You got to be more detailed. And if you're reporting, it leads to other things. That's one thing I wanted to touch on. My location, and probably 5 others, when we had a law enforcement meeting with them, with ALTO, and we show the data, we get sting operations, where they'll show up, a detective will be in another car with the video live feed, 2 undercovers in the store, and hitting that store on the correct time. So that's why the reporting matters. If you start reporting that your hot zones from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., we're going to get a 6-hour sting operations from law enforcement, and they're bought in because of the data showing. And then we get people. We've had, I think, one recently in the Fort Lauderdale area. They had a booster, an organized retail crime that had over $3,000 in product in their car. So it works, but it all relies on operations bought in and everyone bought in reporting wise to make the data work.
Good points,
Yeah.
Corey. Thank you.
Christy, if I may, just, well, I, you know, sort of have a captive audience here of those working in the AP field. And because I'm still active in law enforcement, I don't want to miss an opportunity to talk about the importance of data and information on the front end, because I can tell the viewers here with certainty that the police officers, majority of the police officers today go into these calls, want to do a good job and make arrests. The more information, the more identifiers, license plates, nicknames that we can give them, that we can arm these officers with on the front end, they're going to go out there and do the job. It's really hard when they get a blurry picture of somebody. It's hard for these younger generations to kind of see value in the long-term process that this can go through. But when they have detailed information to act on, they're using all sorts of technology, from license plate readers to social media to online reporting systems that police departments have. Give them the information because they want to find out who these people are and to capture them. We have to be in a position to enable them to help us the best way we can, and that's with information.
Awesome. No, thank you. I appreciate that. Corey, I think this one's going to be geared a little bit more towards you. It's one that came in a little bit earlier. Coming from the AP side, we're struggling with our ops teams wanting to cooperate with law enforcement, providing reports, follow up at the stations, etc., mainly due to the neighborhoods and environments that they come from and in turn work in. Any suggestions on encouraging our staff to provide that follow-up and good reporting to police?
Great question. One is celebrating the wins. So, you know, ALTO providing us the wins. From the moment they're arrested, Esther, our attorney, will keep us updated on the whole process and also exactly what happens. The good thing with ALTO and the relationship we have with them, they do all that. They show up to court. We turn over the subpoenas to them. They represent us. It takes that headache away from our team members in operations and the worry. A lot of them fear that. Like our one team member assaulted, everything was there. The facts were there. And for her not to have to go to court, it takes that fear out. That's the biggest thing, I think, that helps us do more reporting operations wise. That's where we fell through the cracks. When I was a store manager, it was tough. It was tough to go to court and be that face that subject sees, and not knowing where you live, but they know where you work. And if you're 40 hours a week, it's your second home. And they have that fear. But that's one partnership with ALTO that is win, win, win 3 times. Them representing us and taking that stress out of that for our team members. So that helps us report. I know if you don't have that option, it's tough to get them to report. I say start with the wins, the buy-ins, show what the outcome is and the why. I always, as a store manager, I thought I was successful because I always explained to my team members the why first, why they're doing something. So hopefully if you explain that, it gets them on board. Take the team members to community events. We do community events. ALTO's out there. We're out there. Law enforcement, they see them. They build a relationship with law enforcement, the employees. Maybe that makes them more comfortable. Those are some options.
Very good. Christy, Robert, anything to add to that? Or all right. So the next question, and I think this might go back to Christy and Robert. It was mentioned that there's less impact when a case of $100 worth of theft or something similar is taken to court versus those with a higher dollar or violent crime incidents. Is it still worth taking these cases to court, however, to establish a history in case these individuals move on to higher dollar items or begin to display violence?
Absolutely, yes. Like I said, anything that happens, you want to make sure there's a report. With the case that Corey spoke of, this gentleman had a laundry list, a very lengthy laundry list of charges against him and things that had happened. And he was still out walking around doing bad things. So yes, it's absolutely crucial to report anything that occurs like that. Also, there could be, maybe that's $100 in your store, in your one store, but using our alliance of retailers that we work with, we can look at the information we're gathering as a whole, and we can make those connections to maybe it was $100 in Walgreens, but maybe it was $1,000 somewhere else. In a lot of cases, those can also be aggregated, proving for a much larger penalty, just as in the case that Corey was talking about with the gentleman that got 30 years. So yeah, definitely want to report. But Robert, from a law enforcement perspective, anything I'm missing or that you want to add?
I think it goes back to people starting to understand the problem. And without the information, without the repeated information, the repeated names coming through, the repeated crime scenarios, some in the criminal justice process might be numb to what's actually going on. And I think even at those low levels, getting those cases in front of judges, in front of prosecuting attorneys, really kind of sets the stage for the big stuff. And it really also helps distinguish a difference for when we do have that organized retail crime come in with thousands of cases or hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think there's a stark difference there, and it's really important that we get it on both ends, the large ones and the small ones.
And so this was kind of a comment that had come in, so it's not necessarily a question, but I'd like to get your comments or observations. Tough times now with courts and judges not wanting to prosecute shoplifters and seek restitution. What are you guys seeing overall as a kind of standard from that? Like if you're taking a case to court, is there kind of a pattern that you're seeing, or is it pretty consistent if you can prove that this is happening, that there is a recourse?
I think it's, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Robert.
I thought that one was for me, guys. Sorry. I've seen, in my travels, kind of nationwide approach on law enforcement, I've seen different regions, different communities have different standards. So I think it's not quite, we can't really give you a canned answer for that specific piece. But what I can tell you is that even in the areas where they're more apprehensive on incarcerating someone over theft, even if that offender gets a stay away order from that particular retailer, that is a piece of leverage that police departments can use to get that person in front of the judge again and again and again on the violations. And then maybe once they're seen on a docket 5 or 6 times in a row for the same thing, and they're doing the same theft, maybe that'll get enough attention on that offender to where the judge will say, enough is enough. You're going to get some time for this. And then, like I said before, once that person is sitting in jail talking to other people who are doing the same crimes they are, that message will get out. And again, the goal here is to prevent it from happening altogether.
So, Christy, I'm gonna put this one back to you, and you may give it to someone else. But this is going to be the last question that I ask here. So it's a question that actually came in the webinar chat. But my understanding is this is actually what ALTO does versus the retailer having to do. So, what's the best practice with follow-ups for law enforcement, or with law enforcement or the courts for reported cases for the retail side? Is that something that ALTO is actually doing, those follow-ups, or is the retailer also assisting with that?
So that's one of the things that is very difficult for the retailers, as we've understood, to follow, right? Because they do, like I said, they do a great job putting these cases together, getting information, the evidence, all that good stuff, right? CCTV footage. A lot of times there is a disconnect, if you will, with, let me talk about the prosecution piece real quick. So whether it's prosecution or the law enforcement side, being able to, from this time the incident occurs, it's really important to have oversight, because like I said, anything can fall through in one of those pitfalls, right? An example on law enforcement side might be something along the lines of maybe, there's a police report, but maybe it didn't get assigned to a detective, or maybe the evidence wasn't gathered in enough time. There are time limits on these things, right? So the other part of it is getting the court system to understand that retail cases do matter. It's not just a victimless crime. There are victims in this. So there are a couple of parts to that we really need to look at. Following and tracking that has been one of the key things, back to the question you asked, Julie, is one of the key things that we do. We have that oversight. Probably not the right term, but we kind of babysit that from the start of the incident occurring all the way through the process. So absolutely. I think it's very difficult for the retailer to do that. They have so many other things that they're trying to do, and it takes a lot of time, resources, the knowledge of the local court systems and how to get these things in there. So yes, we absolutely track it, and we keep our retail partners apprised of every step of the way of, what's going on throughout the whole process. Did that answer your question? You're muted, Julie.
Thank you. It absolutely did answer my question, and we are out of time. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Christy, Robert, Corey, thank you so much. This has absolutely been an amazing session, and I can already see from some of the comments that have come in, people have really appreciated everything that you guys have to share. For anyone that is interested in learning more about ALTO and what they do, please feel free to reach out. I know I popped their LinkedIn in the chat, but also, feel free to reach out to Christy or Robert to learn more. As far as the webinar goes, we always give out a promo code for 20% off of an LP qualified course, an LP certified course, or ORC investigation course or membership. Please feel free to use that. That is going to be Alliance 2024, and it will expire on June 14th. So it's going to be available there for a month. It's not going to be valid on exams or a couple of other things, but please feel free to use that if you are looking to purchase a course or membership. As far as attending the webinar today, during sign up, folks had the opportunity to register to potentially win a course scholarship. So the course scholarships will be issued out tomorrow. And yes, whoever had called that out earlier, that should say non-transferable. These scholarships are non-transferable. So if you win them, you cannot transfer them. That also comes in part of the email. I'll be fixing this template. But those course scholarships will show up, or winners will show up in email tomorrow. You will have 7 days to claim those course scholarships. So please make sure that that you keep an eye out for those. And then last but certainly not least, if you're not already subscribed to the Loss Prevention Foundation's site, please sign up on the site. The QR code is there. I'll leave it up for just a minute so that way that you can get notifications of these webinars. Otherwise, follow us on LinkedIn. I know I posted that link earlier. And last but very certainly not least, thank you very much, ALTO, for sponsoring today's webinar. Please visit them. They will be out at NRF Protect here at the beginning of June, and their booth is 1040. Christy, Robert, Corey, thank you so much. Y'all have been absolutely wonderful. It was a wonderful webinar, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. We
all.
really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I'll leave this webinar sign-in notification or sign up for just another minute here, but feel free to drop and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thanks all.
Thank you, everyone.